I have two pieces of good news for you. I would even say two pleasant messages. One is about international affairs, and the other is about domestic matters. I would even say one is about criminal matters. But both are good news. Two good ones, and there's another one at the end that's very pleasant and funny. Let's start with international affairs, and then we'll enjoy the matters that... Well, let's put it this way. The return of justice in the United States of America. You will perish by what you brought to us, or you will perish by what you came to us with. Something like that, yes. Well, ultimately, the cherry on top is a must. You can't miss it no matter what. And this, as the Americans say, will make your day, maybe even your week. By the way, who knows? So listen. So you all know what the global south is. That means Putin really likes to say these words quite often. And this very global south, according to Vladimir Vladimirovich, has risen up to fight against the dominance of a unipolar world led by the United States of America. They really don't like that order. These are developing economies: China, India, Russia, Brazil, South Africa. These are developing economies. As I understand it, they started developing after kicking out the colonizers. Before that, they were developed, but now they've become developing. So they all decided together that they would trade duty-free, that they would do some joint projects. But most importantly, they're going to hit with a hook from the left, from the right leg, and then also hit the dollar. How are they going to introduce their own currency? Well, it's kind of a jab at the dollar and the euro, but especially at the annoying dollar, which is under the control of imperialist America. Colonial, absolutely terrifying. The celebration has been ongoing since 2009, over in BRICS, when Trump took office, 47.
In 2024.
Accordingly, well, let's say until 2025, they kept celebrating over there. Then the celebration started to slow down. First of all, Donald J. announced that, so to speak, if a new currency is established, those who do it will have to pay a separate 100% duty on importing goods into the United States. That is, if they are already paying, say, 15% or someone is paying 45%, then they will have to pay 115-145% respectively. Secondly, all BRICS countries were informed that by purchasing energy resources from Russia, which is at war, so to speak, they are financing the war in Ukraine with these purchases. How much does killing people cost? On the other hand, the buyers will have to pay another 100%. These are not the same ones, but additional. That means it's already 215 or maybe 245%. And if this goes on for a long time, how long will Donald Trump keep deciding this? Naturally, instead of presidential ones, the president is allowed to impose up to a 100% tariff if more is needed. The decision there is up to Congress, the Senate. So the Senate itself suggested, let's make it 500 so it really hurts them. Instead of 100%, it would be 500%, resulting in 615% and 645% tariffs on imported goods. As you can understand, nobody will buy those goods, especially since the same goods will be brought in, say, from Indonesia or Vietnam. Well, yes, they cost about 10-15% more there, but, gentlemen, than Indian ones, let's say, yes, but without hundreds of percent added to the price. That is, goods from those countries that have changed, from our point of view, will cost 2, 3, 5, or even 10 times less. And then it will be very difficult or even impossible to return, that is, with supplies to a market that has already made agreements with competitors. And BRICS started to crack, I would say. Well, where it's thin, that's where it breaks, yes. And it feels like any moment now, it might just fall apart. Or maybe it won't fall apart. Or maybe it will just keep existing like many other silly international organizations, just going on and on. First, India said that it doesn't really want the new currency that much, that it's actually used to the dollar, they're just used to the dollar, that's how it is. And it will stick with it. Then the Brazilian president very responsibly stated that there's no need to accept new members. Well, maybe that's it. The whole idea was, yes, to unite, as they say, everyone who is against, wants to, agrees, or wants to fight against the meeting of the damned imperialists. So the Brazilians in general believe that it's necessary to gather, discuss, talk, call for action, well, or
To take action. To take action.
is absolutely unnecessary for anyone. So for now it's not needed, they said yes. Just now at the summit, he said that for now there's no need to act, and for now Donald Trump will be making the decisions. Probably I don't know who. Semyon and BRICS got together at the meeting to decide the future of the organization. But the two main members, that is, well, China and Russia of the Global South, they have taken the lead of the Global South. They didn't show up. Putin sent a video greeting, but Shin didn't show up and didn't send anything. Well, actually, he did send some deputy minister or something. But the Politburo of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China has just reduced his authority, and maybe they told him not to go anywhere so as not to provoke anyone. You should give someone so as not to irritate Trump because Ussie clearly has problems with Trump. Sin got into a fight, not with anyone, just a little. Serious negotiations are currently underway between China and the United States and between India and the United States. And nobody wants to end up on what you might call Trump's bad side. Fortunately, the state of the nation, since China and India directly depend on what Trump decides, and perhaps will force all Europeans to follow the European Union, to follow America in restricting, let's say, the Global South's access to our markets. Why do you want to fight with us, guys? Yes, you want to fight with us? Ah, okay, go ahead and fight, but with one condition, not with our money. Earning money from us and fighting us at the same time. So make a decision. Either you want to earn money or you want to fight. BRICS countries sent. But they still haven't realized that any centralization slows down the development of technology and the emergence of new industries. It's no coincidence that there are no technological breakthroughs in India, while people from that country who come to the United States rise to the highest levels in the world of startups. Why don't they have it at home, but when they come to the States, they do? Why is it that Russian Jews, by the way, in Russia seem unremarkable and can't really think, at least in the last 70, 80 years, but when they come to America, they open up new horizons like developing entire new industries. But when they're over there, all they can do is copy. Well, to steal in the Russian way, yes. And what do they copy and steal? They steal what was made in the United States by those who left. I don't think anyone has ever done research on this. Why does it happen? Why Indians and Russians? Yes, I'm sure others do it too. Well, it's just that I know a lot of Indians and, so to speak, a lot of Russians very well. Yes, so to speak, well, ex-Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, ex-Russia, but still they're just as Russian as I am, roughly. They're Russian and Jewish. It would be very interesting if someone conducted such an investigation. I claim that even in incomplete capitalism, well, what we have in the United States, this kind of mix. Capitalism with some socialist outcries. Even with partial freedom, a person grows wings. Why does the shop owner work from 5 in the morning until midnight and spend all the rest of his time thinking about his business? And why do employees and managers in other people's businesses never work as much, as well, or as intensely as the owner? Take slaves, for example, the lowest form of hired workers, so to speak. They are taken against their will and not paid at all. They work only out of fear of punishment. They don't develop any enthusiasm. Here comes a special forces soldier type. The motto, "I was in the army, so I know for sure," is the motto of all servicemen. A hired worker, even if he's a decent person, which does happen, puts in work strictly from 8 to 5. Some people work different hours, but here we refer to a typical workday as to 8 to 5. Well, and not entirely decent people either. Try to steal a little or a lot from the boss, as much as they can, of the time paid for by the boss. It's an interesting way of stealing. They don't even really understand that when they get paid, but use part of their working time not for work. I don't mean taking a break to eat or go to the bathroom. They become thieves. So, for example, if it's $30 an hour and you spend 3 hours not working, you've stolen $90 from the boss. But morality has never motivated most people. There are people who work hard because of morality. Only personal interest, that's what motivates people. By the way, there's nothing wrong with personal interest. It's human nature, instilled in us either by the universe, by nature, by Mother Nature, or by someone, or by God. Yes, well, God, so to speak, you can interpret it this way or that, but either way.
To say, who?
Someone thought and did it, or it just happened by itself. I'm not talking about either one right now, but in any case, that's how we turned out, so it's not ours. It's not ours. That's okay, right? You should try to limit yourself to not making things worse for others when you're trying to make things better for yourself. And trying to make things better for yourself is normal. So, well, I started with one thing and then went way off track. The more the government takes away, well, the government is the force that, so to speak, runs society, what we call the state, whatever you want to call it. The more it takes away from a person, the less personal interest he has, and that means he works worse. Take North Korea, for example. They take away 100% there, right? In Denmark and Sweden, for example, they take 50% from high incomes, plus 25% from all purchases. You spent all your money and bought something. Why would you need more money? Right there, they take 25% of that money. Remember, an additional 27% is in the municipalities. And that's before taxes. There's a reason Astrid Lindgren is a world-famous Swedish writer. The children's writer reported that the Swedish tax authority is demanding from her. She calculated 102% of the money she earned in a year. That is, she worked for a year. She has to give away everything she earned. But on top of that, she also has to take out more from what she earned before. If that's the case, she even has to borrow 2% of that money from someone to pay all the taxes. And she corrected her strictly. Who would work 25 hours a day just to give 100% to someone else in the end? Well, we have Uncle Sam, someone else might have Uncle Olaf, maybe. Yeah, that's it. And not only do you give it all away, you even add some of your own money on top. Well, what can you say? They really need to spend that money. Of course, with Astrid, it was an exceptional situation. They started to change some things afterwards. According to the rules, people typically pay 70 to 75%, but she was offered 120% for undisclosed reasons. By the way, smart people aren't very enthusiastic about it, and neither are fools. When you're left with just a small portion of what you've earned, who would want that? So, all the countries of the global south rob their citizens much more than the United States government robs its own. And that's why they still can't compete with the United States. Things will still be better for us, especially since we're moving towards completely abolishing taxes, Trump-style ideas and various money-making strategies. And we'll get funds from the money foreigners pay us for the right to trade here, in our best and richest market in the world. By the way, why is the American market the richest and the best market in the world? Even though we don't have that many people, there are 350 million here, not 1.5 billion. Because we rob our citizens less. Let's stop here.
To begin with, one of the biggest problems contributing to internal chaos is that its participants do not agree with each other. You might think that such a group would have a common goal, a clear vision to unite around, but that's not the case. Take China and India, for example. These two countries are neighbors, but they are far from being friends. They have a long-standing border dispute in the Himalayas. It has even led to violence, not just talk. In 2020, a clash in the Galwan Valley led to soldier deaths. Since then, tensions have stayed high, with both countries building up troops and infrastructure along the border. They are also vying for leadership in the global south. India wants to lead thanks to its technological and democratic achievements, but China, with its huge economy and global trade networks, is not going to let India take center stage. This disagreement is a rivalry that hinders cooperation. There's also Russia to consider. For Moscow, BRICS is a lifeline as the Ukraine war has isolated Russia, leaving BRICS as one of the few places where it can still play a global role. But this creates a problem. Other members, like Brazil and South Africa, don't want to be seen as Russia's henchmen. They have strong trade ties with the United States and Europe. South Africa relies on Western markets for its exports, while Brazil's agricultural sector heavily depends on trade with the West. Getting too close to Russia risks alienating these partners. While Russia is promoting BRICS as anti-West, Brazil and South Africa aim to balance between the two sides. It's a balancing act, and it's not going smoothly. India is in a similar situation, being part of BRICS, while also growing closer to the United States through defense agreements with Washington.
What can I say? When the swan, the crayfish, and the pike each pull in their own direction, the cart won't rush at cosmic speed to catch up with and overtake America. It just won't happen. We've already studied this together. And here Trump, among other things, with a huge pile of sanctions and his changing position regarding peace talks with Putin, started hinting at what?
And President Trump is seeking to undermine Russia's oil profits if Putin ignores his Friday deadline. Remember, he said tomorrow 10 days ago. Now, they have 10 days no more to come up with a plan to end the war in Ukraine.
Lowering the energy price by $1.10 per barrel will force Putin to stop killing people due to Russia's struggling economy.
We welcome General Jack Keane, retired four-star general, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, and senior strategic analyst at Fox News. General, it's always a pleasure to see you. Your thoughts on this comment and the meeting at ICOF, and how important is it? As we approach the end of the 10-day deadline that Trump recently shortened for Russia.
This is significant for Mart. The president made two critical decisions. That is to increase military aid from the United States to Ukraine, and also to remove the American taxpayer from participating in funding this. The Europeans will fund this. It's our equipment. They will transfer it to the Ukrainians, and there will be even more. And then the second thing we're talking about this week, and that's probably Putin. I doubt he'll sit down at the table and agree to a temporary choice. A ceasefire, which is the main condition. The president will probably impose tariffs and sanctions. And then, what is it that Putin is planning here? I mean, he tried to break the president's will and determination by dragging out the negotiations, irritating him. And he wanted the president to leave, to kind of give up on this. And he's trying to do the same thing with Zelensky, escalating the war against the people and killing more people every day as a result of this escalation, so that people would put pressure on Zelensky, break his will, and force him to surrender and make significant concessions. The exact opposite happened. The president in this case doubled down in the sense that he did not break his will. Of course, he strengthened his resolve to pursue Putin and force him to come to the negotiating table. And the people in Ukraine are simply wonderful. They would all vote tomorrow for the war to end if it could be over. But at the same time, they have united around this escalation and are not making any demands of Zelensky except to keep as little corruption as possible in his government. But they support his efforts and resilience against the Russians. So what's the conclusion?
So, more weapons for Ukraine, and it's the European Union that pays for these weapons. And secondly, Trump is planning to work on reducing the price of oil by 10%. Take it away, that's what I mean. And when Trump takes something on, he usually succeeds about 70–80% of the time. That is, he achieves the goal he sets. Unlike all other world politicians who on average fulfill about half of their promises and tasks, Trump has fulfilled 70% of what he promised so far. That's not 100%. The poor only live to 100 and only in good weather.
We know that Russia is
an economy dependent on a single commodity, oil. We're talking about oil and to a lesser extent gas. And we know that these major countries buy it at reduced prices, which helps Putin. Putin has switched to a war economy. And that means that everything he invests, not completely, but almost everything, is aimed at providing himself with military materials. If this income starts, it will sharply decrease, and it won't start immediately, but it will start over time, and he won't have this income to produce the products necessary to sustain himself in the war. And this is a serious problem.
This is one piece of news. or rather a whole stream of news, as they say, but all positive, as I promised, positive. BRICS seems to be losing steam globally and is no longer baring its teeth on the world stage. Well, I didn't even have time to finish this video, by the way, and then the news came in. Vitkov met with Putin in Moscow. Putin requested a meeting with Trump, and the meeting will take place. It's not very clear yet when, not very clear yet. In Putin's delegation, will Zelensky be there? Zelensky will not be there. Let me explain. If the meeting takes place, it will mean one of two things. Actually, state leaders, so to speak, meet in only two cases. For a ceremony when everything is already decided, just photos, shaking hands, drinking champagne, talking about something else. Or when you need to back down in a beautiful setting, with both sides assuring that there's no backing down or surrender happening. On the contrary, quite the opposite. Think for yourself. An old joke came to mind. Are you thinking for yourself? A Georgian man in a train compartment opened the window, then thought that maybe the person sitting next to him was bothered by the draft and asked, "Is the draft bothering you?" To which the reply was, the following kind of response. The lady said, "Well,
On the contrary, not me."
After a minute of silence and having thought over what he heard on the contrary, Gruzin asked, "Do you think so?" In my opinion, it's very funny. That is, if there aren't any usual Russian tricks, then we are witnessing, yes, gentlemen, finally witnessing the beginning of the process of peaceful settlement in Ukraine. Unless, of course, Putin starts acting like, well, some kind of green hornless goat like Zelensky in the Oval Office, like he got high and started telling stories about how bad Putin is and how to make peace in general. It's impossible. But it seems that not everything between Vitkov and Putin went the way Trump wanted. That's why they imposed an additional 25% tariff on India, so that they would think 3 times before buying oil from Putin, and so that they would put a little pressure on him. The second piece of good news is that hearings are starting in Congress. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't expect such a powerful response. To be honest, I did expect it. 4 years, Trump and his friends, along with his associate, were harassed. Their nerves were shattered. Remember, Giuliani was put in prison, Steve Bannon and others. And now it's their turn.
The Democratic leadership.
The party started sweating, getting nervous, and wetting their diapers. And not just because of the lawsuit from Tulsi Gabbard. The Committee on Oversight and Government Reform is part of the United States Congress, and it's currently controlled by the Republicans. Accordingly, he sent out subpoenas. Who did he send the subpoenas to? How wonderful, what happiness, how nice it is to live in the Trump era. So he sent out subpoenas for testimony, those whom Trump calls the swamp. Well, the most swampy ones. Let me give you a list of the swamp dwellers right now. On October 9, Hillary Clinton will have to answer for the old emails, the deleted ones, for deceiving the Justice Department with
smashing phones,
and so on. On October 14th, her husband beat her. Do you remember him? Yes? He flew to Kapstein Island 26 times. Endless stories of sexual harassment. I have something to ask, and another thing I'll mention later. There was one story he tried to get behind my back. Before that, on October 2, the Attorney General Bazin, that's Mary Garland, blocked the corruption investigation and ordered to cover it up. The FBI monitoring parents who didn't want their children to be taught. So, how was it it's written and stated by them? Well, basically, it's what they call wokeness. That is this so-called anti-racism, but actually racism. They also demanded to cancel sex education for children in elementary school. James Comey, hooray, October 7th surprise. William Boa, Attorney General under Trump in the 45th. That's wonderful, wonderful news. He's such a scoundrel. This is something absolutely fantastic. He was already in the spotlight back when they were helping with Ledianistum. August 26th, the Alberta Cazalis. This is the Attorney General under Bush as well.
Are required. No.
On the brain. In August, Jeff Sessions on August 28th. That means Trump's very first Attorney General was the first to betray him. Mueller on September 2nd, Robert Mueller himself. This stream is incredibly intriguing. Before all this, he moved into a home for the demented, into a ward for people who had lost their memory, partially lost their memory. He's attempting to evade justice and succeeded in getting away. He might be crazy, you know. It's quite possible that he's insane. September 9th, Larita Ilyich. This is Prosecutor General Leo Bami. This is the story. She was laundering for Hillary and secretly meeting with Bill Clinton. Her plane arrived there, his plane. They were somewhere in the shadows. A journalist just happened to be walking by, saw Clinton, suddenly photographed her, and in
she ended up in the shot.
Larita Ilyich class, and Eric Holder is also the Attorney General under Lee Obama. Wonderful. He's also a scoundrel, just like Barr and Larita Ilyich, all very familiar names. I think we should stop shouting hooray and start shouting hallelujah, hallelujah. By the way, did you notice where the investigation is headed? Toward the Prosecutor General?
То есть на Министерство юстиции, которое превратили в оружие против республиканцев. Кто это делал? Обама, Байден, Трамп.
No, Trump didn't do that. Under Trump, they managed somehow. Hooray, hooray.
Там гнобить республиканцев. Вы при Буше тоже. Вот.
And for those people who turned our justice system into the checker of the Bolshevik Party, people who served either the ideology or the Washington swamp, all those people mentioned under that president, the Republicans and the Democrats. By the way, Trump recently said that he is considering presidential candidates for 2028 and is leaning toward James David Vance and as vice president Marco Rubio. I think people will like that. My attitude toward James David was and still is like this, a wonderful guy. He understands the social situation correctly, navigates international politics, but lacks an internal understanding of economics. Actually, right now, he's with the best economics instructor in the world. If the instructor says that JD is capable of continuing the work for which we elected Trump, then I'll raise my hand and vote for him. I'll vote for that pair. And it's also nice that Otten, of course, they love Marco and will go vote for him in crowds.
All right. President Trump made these comments during an event where he signed an order regarding the oversight of the 2028 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. He said he was concerned that, based on the $100 million that went missing from the Los Angeles firefighting event, Gavin Newsom, this money could be stolen, misused, laundered, or placed into shadow funds. That's why President Trump and Washington District of Columbia are taking control of the 2028 Olympics. President Trump responded to a question from Peter Doocy of Fox News, and here he revealed that he believes J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio would make an incredible team. Now, polls show that J.D. Vance is in a strong position. An Emerson College poll shows that he significantly outperforms Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris. It also shows his support at 61%, while Steve Bannon is going next with only 12% and Ron DeSantis with just 7%. So it's all speculation. As my friend Roger Stone says, 3 to 5 years is a long time in the world of politics. Well, our good friend Senator Adam Schiff,
one of the most controversial, lying, and I would say sad people in American politics today in the United States of America. This is the senator from
California, Adam Schiff, finally being held accountable. A few weeks ago, I was pleased to share with you the news that Adam Schiff was charged with mortgage fraud. And President Trump reinforced this with several comments during press conferences, live broadcasts, and posts on Truth Social. I also reinforced this, just like other conservative YouTubers did. Well, now, the Attorney General of Maryland has officially opened a mortgage fraud investigation against Adam Schiff. Guys, this is just the beginning. I expect this guy to be arrested, to be financially drained for lying to make America great again and misleading his voters for many years against our great president, Donald J. Trump. I believe that he will also end up in jail and lose his seat in the Senate. In the great state of California, this guy tried to illegally stage a coup that would overthrow President Trump, destroy his marriage, ruin his life, his businesses, and his reputation. Let's watch together what was said on Laura Ingram's show on Fox News, because I think you'll find it absolutely fascinating. And let me know in the comments if you want this guy to be arrested and removed. Just like we did with Bob Goldbar's Menendez, who was literally taking bribes in the form of gold bars. Let's watch it now.
And tonight, an update on the Ingraham Angle exclusive. A source from the Trump administration told the Angle that Adam Schiff is under criminal investigation by the United States Attorney's Office in Maryland for possible mortgage fraud charges. Now, this follows the story we broke last month when the Federal Housing Finance Agency sent a criminal referral to the Department of Justice, alleging that Schiff had, on several occasions, falsified bank documents and property records to get better loan terms. Then, in a 2011 affidavit signed by the then congressman from California, he affirmed that the property in Montgomery County, Maryland, was his primary residence. He also owns an apartment in Burbank, California, which he also claimed as his primary residence, and he said this in 2023 during his Senate campaign.
I think almost every member of Congress has a residence in their state and a residence in Washington. As we are in session most of the week, people decide where their children will live, but our primary residence has always been and will always be in California.
Well, Senator Schiff did not respond to us about these accusations, but we were able to find a statement that his campaign spokesperson gave to cable news network in 2023. She said that the condominium in Burbank is his primary residence, but Adam's addresses in California and Maryland were listed as primary residences for obtaining a loan. They are both occupied year-round, unlike a vacation home, but the law doesn't make that distinction. Let me just say this, but nice try, Propietka.
All right, you can't have two primary residences, right? I mean, there can only be one. I was thinking about moving to Puerto Rico. For tax reasons, you have to live there for a certain number of months and days to call it your primary residence. Otherwise, you won't get the favorable credit, favorable taxation, or favorable insurance. So that's just another example. The fraudster Adam Schiff, who lied to the American people while committing the very crimes he accused Donald Trump of.
Time and again, we find out that what the Democrats accused Trump of, they were doing themselves. And now they're gone. And specifically for the very things they angrily and passionately accused an innocent person of. Life is really interestingly arranged. And now listen to something absolutely stunning, but it explains the rise of Barry Soetoro. Well, as we know him by another name, we know him as Barack Hussein Abbott.
Why is this important? Going back to his mother, yes, his mother goes from village to village as a so-called anthropologist to find out who in the village is a communist so that they can be executed. And she's an agent, that's what she does. So is that where the blood is, on the hands of the Obama family? And he refuses to acknowledge any activities of his mother during that period except that she was an anthropologist. She used to walk around those villages,
which were far away
from the truth. This coup is one of the most underestimated coups supported by the CIA in American history, with the highest number of casualties among all coups in American history.
It turns out that the Bush family knew Barack's stepfather well. His stepfather worked for 30 years as the head of the international department at President Bush's uncle's company, Sasha. Well, so that's how it is. Who is he, the younger Bush's great uncle?
Uncle George Herbert
Walker, uncle.
George Herbert Walker, after whom George Herbert Walker Bush was named, the first President Bush founded Hollyborton in 1946 in Oklahoma, and Lola Soitera was the International Executive Vice President of Standard Oil. It was said that he was a CIA agent. Well, yes, you see, he led death squads for the Indonesian army. On his orders, anyone could be killed. So when George Herbert Walker Bush became the head of the CIA under the Ford administration, he simply contacted his old oil business friend Lola Soiter and arranged the killing. You see, Baracus's grandmother was recognized as the woman who managed the channels through which CIA money flowed into the southwestern Pacific. So she introduced her daughter, who had just given birth to Barry, to Elolo Suitoru, and they got married. Elolo Suitoru adopted Barack Obama. The name was changed to Barry Suitoru. Now, when he went to high school in Hawaii, I know about that school. I almost sent my eldest son there. I could afford it, but I didn't think he deserved it.
As shown in the report, in 1983, President Obama worked at Business International Corporation. The company, a CIA front, held seminars with influential world leaders who were involved in CIA espionage activities abroad. Matson says that this intelligence connection exists in Obama's family. Obama's maternal grandmother, Madeleine Danham, was one of the first female vice presidents of the Bank of Hawaii in Honolulu. The report says that this bank was also a CIA front for transferring money to repressive dictators and rulers, such as former Indonesian President Sukarno, who came to power through a CIA-backed coup. In the 1960s, Obama's father was chosen by the leader of the Kenyan African National Union, Tom Mboya, to receive scholarships and be sent to the University of Hawaii. CIA files indicate that Mboya was an important agent of influence for the agency. The transfer was a CIA operation. I promised.
An interesting visa. Not just like that and not out of nowhere. Appeared. Buri Barak, he appeared from...
TSR a lot.
For years, these guys organized coups and uprisings in developing countries. For many years, they had influence over the White House and used the methodology they developed for other countries at home on their own territory, undermining our Constitution. Bush was like Andropov in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, like Putin in Russia, the head of a spy and sabotage agency. Obama was an agent, the son of an agent. His mother, father, stepfather, grandmother, they say they were all CIA, close to the top. His grandmother was the director of a bank that was a CIA front. If you believe all these stories they're telling us now, his stepfather worked for President Bush's uncle and then cooperated with Bush Sr. It just gets crazier and crazier. It's all interesting. It just keeps getting more and more intriguing. Every minute, something interesting happens. Gentlemen, I think I'll do the next show from Los Angeles. The trip was wonderful, but it's time to go home, and honestly, I already want to go home because everything interesting that's happening is happening now in America. See you soon.